Today we're going to talk about a group of organisms that are called arthropods. Arthropods have several characteristics that separate them from other organisms, and we will review those first in these first few slides. First of all, the arthropod has what's known as an exoskeleton. As you well know, most of us have internal skeletons. That is, our skeleton is within our body. The arthropods, on the other hand, have their skeleton on the outside. And it's a body covering that does very much the same thing that our internal skeleton does. That is, it provides protection and support for the animal. Secondly, this exoskeleton is made up of a material called chitin. Chitin is selected as the material probably because it has both features of flexibility as well as toughness, and it makes the exoskeleton quite hard and yet flexible and able to move and allow for movement of the organism. Now, because the organism has an exoskeleton, they do something that most other organisms don't do. They molt. Molting is a shedding of the outer covering so that it can be replaced with a new covering. This is primarily due to the fact that the exoskeleton, being hard, does not allow for growth. So as the organism gets larger and larger, it has to shed an old exoskeleton and replace it with a newer, larger exoskeleton. And there is a brief period there where the organism is actually vulnerable because the new skeleton is not hardened as yet. And you will find these molted exoskeletons out in the woods and various other places if you look for them. Some other characteristics of arthropods include the following. The arthropod's body is divided up into either 3 or 2 segments. The segment that's found between the head segment and the abdomen segment is called the thorax. The abdomen is the most posterior aspect, and on this diagram, this is the abdomen of this insect. This is the thorax, and then this will be the head. And some of the arthropods have a fusion of the head and the thorax into a single segment called the cephalothorax. Spiders, for example, have a fused cephalothorax and then an abdomen. Insects, on the other hand, have a separate head and a separate thorax. The arthropods, most of the arthropods, the insect side of the arthropods, have what's known as a compound eye. A compound eye is a single eye that has multiple lenses. Each lens has limited scope. And because of the design of these eyes, they don't see images quite clearly. They see more shadows moving back and forth. Other arthropods, primarily spiders, have what's known as a simple eye. A simple eye is an eye that has a single lens, much like our eye. And these eyes have a broader scope and are able to see images in more detail. Another aspect of arthropods is the presence of an antenna. The antennae are sense organs that process sensations other than vision. So they provide taste, touch, and smell sensations to the organism and to the organism's nervous system. Arthropods are also characterized by the fact that they have what's known as an open circulatory system. Now, I mentioned this a little bit in the last week's lecture, But in this week's lecture, because most of these organisms have an open circulatory system, I'm going to explain it in a little bit more detail. An open circulatory system is a system that allows blood to flow outside of the blood vessels. Now this is contrasted to a closed circulatory system in which the blood always remains within blood vessels. And so in an open system, when the blood departs the blood vessels, it then mixes or comes in contact with cells in various parts of the body cavity and allows for a direct gas exchange with the blood. And then there's another area where the blood is then collected and brought back into this circulatory system and then pumped throughout the body, and then it removes outside the circulatory system again. Now, one class of arthropods is a class known as crustaceans or crustacea. And crustacea are notable in the fact that they live in water. They can live in either fresh water or marine, that is salt water, and they are brought together by the fact that they all live in some sort of aqueous or water environment. Another aspect of the crustaceans is that they have a single plate that covers most if not all of the cephalothorax. And this single plate covering is called the carapace. Because they live in water, they have to have organs to remove oxygen from the water and put it into the blood, and these are called gills. These function by having water pass over them. The oxygen then moves from the water into the blood that is inside the gills, and then the water moves on and the blood is pumped throughout the body and provides oxygen to the rest of the body. Also during this process, carbon dioxide and other waste products of metabolism are removed. Now this is a crayfish or crawfish. Looks very much like a lobster. And I want to use this diagram to point out some of the external anatomy of this animal. The animals have several different kinds of legs. The first of these is called the walking legs. These are the walking legs down here that allow the organism to walk on land, and they do come up on land from time to time. They can also walk on the bottom of the whatever water they're in. The second set of legs normally are found under the tail here are called swimmerets. And swimmerets generally are used for swimming, but also assist in reproduction, and the reproductive areas are also within the swimmerets. Now back on this end is something called the uropod and telson. The uropod combined with the telson, this is the telson here, the uropods are on each side. This aids in swimming, and the interesting aspect of this organism is it swims backwards because this uropod flips from posterior to anterior, and the organism swims such that it moves tail first with the head and claws dragging behind. Now, other legs include the chilioped, which is the large crusher claws, and then also these large antennae. Said the chilioped is the crusher claw for this organism. It's used for defense when attacked, and also is used to attack a potential meal. These smaller areas here are called antennules. The antennules aid the organism in balance, in addition to providing taste and touch. Now, the longer appendages here are called antennae, and these are much more sensitive than the antennules. These also provide taste, touch, as well as smell sensations. So I could show you a diagram like this on a quiz or test, and you would be able to label these various parts. The swimmerets are under here. The walking legs are here. The coleoptera is here and here. The uropod and telson is back here. Put together makes the swimming tail or flipper tail. And then the antennae are here and here. And as it says, these are the eyes, although these are not part of the legs, which is what we were talking about. Now, when you look at the circulatory system for the crustacea, as I said before, they have an open circulatory system. They also have a ventral dorsal arrangement of their circulatory system such that their heart is at the dorsal side. Their other blood vessel is on the ventral side. Afferent means carrying blood to the heart. Efferent generally means carrying blood away from the heart or away from whatever organ they're talking about. Actually, in this case, it's not the heart, but it's the gills. So you have the afferent brachial vessels that carry blood to the gills and the efferent brachial vessels that carry blood away from the gills. Anytime you see AF, it means it's carrying blood to an area, and EF means it's carrying blood away from an area. Here's the heart, and the heart has two chambers with valves within, and then sinuses represent areas where the blood actually leaves the body and then returns back. Now, the heart is also contained within something called the pericardial sinus. Now, here's the gill chambers, are up here. They take in water from the surroundings and allow water to flow over the gills, as I said before, for the extraction of oxygen. The pericardial sinus is the area in the thorax where the heart stays and does its work. The sternal sinus, which is down here, is where the blood collects after it leaves the blood vessels and re-enters the blood vessels. Remember, in an open system, blood at some point leaves the blood vessels and it has to return to the blood vessels at another time, and the sternal sinus is where that occurs. The green gland, which is not shown on this diagram, is a gland that functions much like when we think about our kidneys. The green gland takes in blood, removes impurities of metabolism, and then dumps those impurities into the environment. So it's a form of kidney. Remember, in the earthworms, they were called nephridia. Here they're called the green gland, and they remove the problems of metabolism or the waste products of metabolism and dump it into the surrounding water. Now, when the organism eats, it has to take in food in this area, and it actually has a mandible, much like we have a mandible, although their mandible tends to move in two directions. It breaks food into chunks and then transports it through a very small esophagus here up into the stomach. The stomach is generally divided into two parts. Then after the stomach processes and grinds up the food, it then passes on and goes, there's something at this point called the digestive gland. The digestive gland secretes enzymes into the area here where the food is and completes the breakdown of the food into absorbable materials that can be taken in by the organism. It then, as it passes down the intestine here, the usable food is then absorbed, and then what's left is dumped out through the anus. So that's the digestive system. Also on here, you see here's the pericardial sinus again. Here's the heart within the pericardial sinus. Here's the testis in a male crayfish. And this is what's called the vas deferens, which is where the sperm go after they come out of the testis. And here's another diagram of a similar type. Before we look at new organs, let's identify the ones we were just talking about. Here again is the mouth, mandible in this area, the stomach with it. These are the digestive glands on either side, intestine, anus. Here's the pericardium, pericardial sac with the heart. Here's the testis and the vas deferens here. Remember in the previous, we talked about the swimmerets on this side. Here's the telson in the middle, the two uropods on either side. Up here is the chilioped. The carapace is on the top here. These are all names that you should remember. The smaller antennae are called antennules. The larger antenna is called an antenna. Now, the nervous system of a crustacean is fairly simple and is primarily composed of several ganglia. You'll remember from our previous lectures that a ganglion is a collection of neural cell bodies. It's not quite enough to be called a brain, but there are multiple ganglia along the thorax and the abdomen, and these collections tend to control the neural activity in whatever area they're in. In the crustacean, in the head of the crustacean is something called the statocyst. The statocyst is the organ of balance in the crustacean, much like our semicircular canals or the balance organ in the human. And the statocyst has something known as a statolith within it. It's a little granular sand-like material, and when the crustacean is knocked aside or off balance, this grain moves around within the statocyst, and there's little hair-like projections that detect this motion and help the organism to rebalance itself.